I'm here with Exploration Manager for Iltani Resources, Erik Norum, and we are at Orient East, and behind me is an RC drill rig in action. Erik, I've never seen one of these work before, and I'll guarantee you a whole bunch of other people haven't. Talk me through it.
Okay,
What's
Shae.
it doing?
So what we're doing is we're obviously testing for sulfide zones at Orient East, looking for silver, lead, and indium and zinc. Want me to run through the operation of the rig itself?
Absolutely. Let's hear, before we hear about all the sexy mineralization, we'll do that in another video. Let's go through how this bad boy works.
Okay. So how it works is it's like a pneumatic hammer. So you can see behind the mast of the rig where the rods are sitting, there's actually a large air compressor. The little truck to the right's an auxiliary compressor. That provides extra air for when the ground gets hard. So what happens is the air goes into the head, which is at the top of the, it's actually at the bottom of the mast now. It moved down. So the air goes in there. There's two tubes in the RC rig. There's an outer tube in the tube. The air goes down the outer tube, operates the hammer. The hammer fires on a piston. As it fires, it breaks up the rock into a gravel. Gravel's about 1 centimetre size, 2 centimetre size. Then the air forces that gravel through the hammerhead up the middle tube. Then that comes out on the left-hand side. There's a little cylindrical object called the cyclone. The sample spins through the cyclone, gets homogenized, and then falls down through a cone splitter. The cone splitter further homogenizes it, and then we capture that sample into the green bag, which sits to the side for later use, and into a calico bag, which we eventually send off to the lab.
That is an even better explanation than I actually could have hoped for. Thank you so much. All right, so now let's talk about what this RC is doing here at Orient East, because it was over at Antimony's Reward a couple of days ago.
Friday. They moved
so
over,
now
yes.
It's been moved over here. So what is the purpose of the RC drill rig program out here?
Okay, what we did middle of last year, about July, August last year, we drilled a few holes. There's a few workings around the place. There was some drilling undertaken in the 1970s, diamond drilling. The diamond drilling hit some zones of mineralization that relate to the workings. But what happened with the old timers, they're only chasing, and even in the exploration in the 70s, they're only chasing the very high-grade material. So when they sampled the core, they only took out the very obvious mineralization. So what we're doing now is drilling the same zones, but with the RC rig, we don't just sample the high-grade material, we're sampling the entire zone. So what we've seen is, in some of the areas, so there's about 5 or 6 sub-parallel east-west zones here of varying widths. We just finished 2 holes further up the ridge in the last 2 days. In those zones, we got intersections of around 30 metres width. So within that, there's a metre or so of what we would consider was probably going to be high-grade material. Around that, we're getting a lower-grade stock work. So fine veinlets that also potentially will be economic.
I might have to push you on what that stock work is, because I'll guarantee you most people who are watching this aren't a geo. Okay,
so what we mean by stock work is the rocks here are quite brittle. They're rhyolites, so volcanic lavas and ash falls. They weld together and form quite a hard, brittle rock. When the fluids come in, when the ground's under pressure, the rock fractures into multiple zones. So the veins aren't just contained within one nice zone. They go through all these fractures. And the fractures are in 3 dimensions like a mesh. That mesh is what we call the stock work.
All right, and finally, sort of the nuts and bolts of what's actually happening. How many holes are you digging? And I guess what depths are you targeting around here?
We drill holes, we don't dig them. But
Busted.
Earlier in the year, we drilled out Orient West, which is a nice coherent zone. We ended up with an exploration target on that. The drilling that we did here last year, we were targeting a few different orientations. Being a stock work, it's difficult to know the best way to drill. We've decided on what we think is the preferred orientation. So we're drilling, we have 2 phases of drilling here. Initial phase of about 15 holes with about a follow-up 10 holes. And the idea of that is to get enough density of drilling so we can also produce an exploration target here. The exploration target will cover three of the main 5 or 6 zones that we've identified, the larger of the zones. So that will obviously determine the potential of the area, targeting the larger zones.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why you always ask the geo what they're doing on site. Erik, thanks for that explanation. I hope I'm allowed up close to it when it's off.
Yes, we'll have a chat with the drillers and see if they'll be accommodating and shut down for 5 minutes.
If maybe they could take a lunch break. I mean, it is 33 degrees out here.